morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How's everybody?
Awesome. Marvelous.
All those sunshiny faces. We're sure happy you're with us this morning. And let's go ahead and open with a prayer as we do all our services here at the church. Hi. Come on in. So I have been at Ministers Conference all week, and wisely I decided not to do a talk this morning. So I have a wonderful guest speaker from Houston, a longtime friend, and a friend who I used to badger about going to ministerial school, and he always said, no, that's not my path, not my path, I'm not going to do it, not going to do it. And so sometime or other this year,
wore him down.
he said, I'm going to ministerial school.
It works that way.
Yeah. It does work that way. I fought it for 4 years, and here I am. Anyway, Stephen is again a friend of mine. I met him in Houston, Texas. He's been on, when I was there as minister, he was in our prayer ministry for many, many years, and team leader in the ministry, the prayer ministry, and has been a speaker here before. Hope some of you heard him before. So he has graciously said he would come from Houston this morning to speak, because I sort of had a clue that I was not going to feel like writing a talk and being very good at delivering it this morning. And you can tell them how to find it after they want to read it or watch it again. So let's welcome my good friend and soon to be your good friend, Stephen Fleming.
Morning.
Morning.
How are you all this morning?
Great.
It's funny that Farrellyn talks about how I kind of ran away from what is my calling. It's actually been many more years than you all are aware. It was told to me back when I was 8 years old that I would be a minister. And so I was not keen on that idea. And so I ran from that for 40 years. So here I am standing before you, 49 years old, and have decided that this is my path.
Can't run from God.
No, you can't run. And so my talk today is about taking a stand within our thoughts, from conflict to consciousness. And I named the talk From Conflict to Consciousness because beneath everything that we experience, in order to spring forth out of complacency, sometimes we need that challenge, that conflict, that testing agent to spring us forth to new realizations, new understandings about ourselves. For this is the whole purpose of our journey called life, to relearn who we are, to reintegrate with our absolute selves, that is God. So, what is life? Well, before I get into what is life, I have a couple of jokes.
Life is a joke.
Life is a joke, yes.
That's what.
So, all right, I like these two little jokes. So a man goes to a doctor, and so I'm visiting the doctor. If some of you have heard this joke, please don't say anything.
Just like, don't get away with it.
Right, don't give away the punchline. Man goes to a doctor, and so the doctor says, well, sir, regrettably, you only have 3 minutes left to live. Man jumps back aghast, shocked. What doctor? I mean, what can you do? Is there anything that you can do? And so the doctor thinks about it for a minute and says, I could boil you an egg.
That's terrible.
That's pretty bad. You better have another one after that.
All right, got another one. Man goes to a doctor, all right? And the doctor tells him that I have some bad news and some very bad news. Which one do you want first? Well, let's give me the bad news. The bad news is, the doctor says, okay, bad news is you only have 24 hours to live. Oh my God, what could be worse than that? Well, we tried to get in contact with you yesterday. Yeah, I like that. You know, these jokes don't have anything to do with my talk at all. I just want to share it. Yeah, just want to share it. So, what is life? Life is an energetic state of consciousness where our localized selves attempt to reintegrate with our absolute selves. That is the process. We do it through the experiencing of our emotions. So as we go through these experiences and experience these emotions, we reintegrate with our absolute self as we learn more about that which is our true self. When you take away all of the languages of the world and the philosophies of the world, ideologies of the world, you strip all those things away, what is left within each and every one of us in our localized self are vibratory thought patterns, energetic thought patterns, and beliefs about oneself. And that's all there is. And so everything that, or every belief that our localized selves have within ourselves attracts everything that we experience in this thing called life, everything. So we are constantly creators. We are creators by trade. By trade. We were created in the likeness and image of God, which is God as creator. And so we are constantly creating these experiences in order to relearn who we are. So why am I taking all this time to talk about localized selves and things of that nature? And that is just so that we can be reminded that we are much more than we think we are. We are a localized self within ourselves, and we have gotten to know our localized selves for many years, but we are also a collective self. You want to meet some of your collective self? Look at your neighbor. Look at me. I am you as well. You are me as well. You are a part of my collective self. Let us not forget that we are all one. We need testing agents, however. We need testing agents, and that's what life is all about. So we experience a range of testing agents in our life to help act as a springboard and spring us into realizations, into understandings, and into transcending or overcoming situations and things of that nature. We can experience thoughts of love, joy, and freedom, or we can experience thoughts of fear. And what follows is a whole myriad of ideas and fearful concepts about self that must be relinquished in order to truly understand ourselves. For God has nothing to fear. God has nothing to fear. And so in our understanding, in our relationship with God, we have to understand that we have nothing to fear. Now, that's easier said than done. That's definitely easier said than done. So what imprisons us is nothing external. Our mind can do more things to imprison us than any iron bars or any chains or anything. Our minds can keep us perpetually stuck in life, afraid to express ourselves, afraid to take chances, afraid to step forth and be what we were created to be. These are oppressive thoughts. There is nothing that oppresses us other than oppressive thoughts. In truth, love cannot be oppressed. In the relative, however, in this thing called life, where we have testing agents which are accentuated by our fears, yes, we can imprison ourselves. But these imprisonments, these temporary imprisonments, are only springboards, brothers and sisters. Potential springboards is what they are. And we have the potential to spring forth through this challenge, through this turmoil, through this testing agent into new understandings. So one of my earliest times of experiencing a testing agent for myself was when I was about 15 or so, 15 or 16. And I was in high school. Prior to my experience in high school, I was in magnet schools. I always attended magnet schools. I was a very bright child. But going to high school, I went to public school. And that was a very different experience for me, as I experienced bullying. Now, as a 15-year-old, I just wanted what any 15-year-old child wanted. I wanted people to like me. I wanted to be accepted. I did not experience this acceptance, however. What I experienced was snickering in the class. When I would raise my hand, I experienced isolation and being alone. I was very unhappy. So I chose not to participate in class. I chose not to raise my hand. You know, if I raise my hand and answer the teacher and I answer correctly and that brings on snickering and things like that, well then maybe I just won't raise my hand. Maybe I'll act like I don't even know. If she calls on me, I won't even know. I don't know. Just go to somebody else. Ask somebody else. I don't know. I was very unhappy, and so I withdrew emotionally. And I began to do things like read in my classroom, or write stories, or draw pictures. So I withdrew. However, the teasing and bullying stopped. And so, believe it or not, I was happy with getting poor grades because my grades began to suffer. And I was okay. It was a nice trade-off for me at that time as a 15-year-old, as long as I was left alone. It was okay that I didn't do well in school. It was okay as long as I wasn't picked on anymore. So I was virtually invisible. So here I was, afraid to shine my light, afraid to be what God created me to be, ashamed to be me. Maybe there's some of us who can identify with this story. We've all got high school stories. We remember, we all have stuff to forgive from high school, believe it or not. There's some of us have PTSD as far as high school.
It's true.
So maybe for some, high school was this wonderful, magical place and stuff like that that's, you know, sprung them forward to. It wasn't that for me. It was not that for me. It was not that for me. So when we succumb to these fears and find ourselves stuck in life, we ignore certain desires that we have to express ourselves. Maybe these desires are to bring forth a new idea, but because of fear, we ignore it. We leave it where it is. Maybe these desires are to express something that will create change, but because of fear, we close our mouths and we don't say anything. Most of these desires come from God. I would like to say all of these desires come from God, but at the same time, I don't know what, you know, the nature of the desire. So, but I can safely say that most of these desires come from our absolute selves. It is a desire to express more and more of the divinity through you, or our divinity through ourselves. And you are the only one that can express it. See, that's the thing. Out of the, 8 billion people, no one can express a divine idea the way you can. No one. No one. You have a unique perspective and a point of view that we can all benefit from. So back to my story as a teenager. Back to being caught up in my testing agent, in my fear, in my challenge. So I was depressed, and I made the decision that I was no longer going to go to school. I don't want to go to school anymore. I don't want to deal with this anymore. I remember going to school every morning and feeling knots in my stomach. So one day I decided I'm not going to school anymore. See, Farron was looking over at me like, I never knew that. That's right, Farron. Yes. Yes. Now, I had a mother that didn't play that.
Yeah. I know.
And if you weren't sick in our house, you were going to school, period. That's just end of story. So I manifested an illness. Not made up an illness, manifested an illness. I've always had this ability to manifest things. Always. Throughout my life. And I utilize it now through prayer, as far as when, I'm praying as a prayer chaplain. I utilize it in all aspects, more and more, almost like breathing or reading a book, or I utilize it. Well, back then, the whole goal was not to go to school. I didn't want to go to school. Okay? But I had to be sick. So I manifested the illness. So after going to several doctors, I was diagnosed with viral meningitis. And I was able to stay home for the rest of the school year after doing a spinal tap. And so I was able to stay home the rest of the school year. So there are many times in our lives when we find ourselves stuck like this unhappy teenager. Instead of school, maybe you find yourself stuck in an unhappy employment situation. Maybe instead of school, you find yourself stuck in an unhappy relationship, an unhappy situation, an unhappy circumstance. In some way, perhaps all of us can identify with this unhappy teenager. Proverbs 4:23 reads, "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life." Now, what is the metaphysical meaning of the issues of life? Well, metaphysically, the issues of life are the outcome of our habitual thoughts. As we control our thoughts, we gain control over our destiny. In other words, be mindful of our thoughts. Be mindful, be very mindful, for our thoughts are all powerful. All powerful. You know, science supports this. Science supports this. I'm going to read something to you. In the world of neuroscience and the study of the human brain, many neuroscientists estimate that the human brain has up to 1,000 trillion connections. Functionally related neurons connect to each other and to form neural networks. The more signals sent between two neurons, the stronger the connection grows.
Right here on the piano.
Appreciate it.
I have to do that constantly.
All right. So the more signals sent between two neurons, the stronger the connection grows. And so with each new experience and each remembered event or fact, the brain slightly rewires its physical structure. So what does that mean? What does that mean? Well, what that means is that we are habitual creatures. We are wired habitually. So when we have or create thought patterns, our brain wires to accommodate habitual activity of those thought patterns. When we change our thoughts and our thinkings, the old neurons that supported the old thought patterns dissolve and go away. And then the brain forms new neural networks, which then support the new habitual thinking. That's something. That's something. In Lessons in Truth, it reads, if you keep your thoughts turned toward the external of yourself or of others, you will see only the things that are not real, but temporal, and which pass away. All the false failures or lacks in people or circumstances will seem very real to you. And you will be unhappy and sick. If you turn your thoughts away from the external towards the spiritual and let them dwell on the good in yourself and in others, all the apparent evil will first drop out of your thoughts and then out of your life. So back to the 15-year-old teenager. So towards the middle of summer, we moved to a new location of town, which meant I got to go to a new school. So I was happy about that, but there was something in me that knew or understood that if I did not change something, that I would repeat the experience of the past few years. And I did not want that. I didn't know what to do. I didn't really know about forgiveness as a word. I didn't really know about really grasp the concept. I kind of knew about letting things go, so to speak. if there was something that upset me, I was told sometimes to think about it and work through it and let it go. That was forgiveness for me back then. But I knew that something had to change. That's what I knew. And I was willing to make that change, whatever it was, even though I didn't know what it was. So what did I do? About 2 weeks, after thinking about it, of course, about 2 weeks prior to the start of my new school year, I began to talk to God, or my absolute self. And I told it that I wanted some new friends. I told it that I wanted to be popular. This is what I told it. I told God I want to be popular. Now, I had already experienced the contrast of popularity. I had experienced invisibility. I knew what that was like. I didn't want to experience that anymore. I told it I want to experience the other side of the spectrum. I want to experience popularity and to be liked and to have friends. Didn't know how I was going to do that, I didn't know what I was going to do. The only thing I knew was what I wanted the outcome to be. So why not ask for a red carpet and a limo and a driver or something like that, right? I mean, I'm asking for all of this. I mean, you know. So, in Lessons in Truth, it reads, each of us, no matter how insignificant he may be in the world, may receive from God unlimited good of whatever kind he desires and radiate it to all about him. So on the very first day of school, while waiting on the school bus to pick me up, take me to school, I met Cedric at the bus stop. Turns out Cedric and I had birthdays a day apart from each other. He was February 26th, I was February 27th. So we just struck up a great conversation and talked and laughed and rode the bus together to school, and it was like we had been friends for a long time. Cedric then introduced me to his friend Mike. And Mike and I hit it off as well. What I did not know was that Mike was a football player for the high school football team, and Cedric was captain of the basketball team. That's what I did not know. And so I found myself sitting, this is another thing I said, and I missed that. This is another thing I said I wanted. But I found myself sitting at the quote-unquote popular table during lunch. You know, the one with all the football players and cheerleaders and basketball players, that table. We all know about that table. We know about that table. Right. Well, I had seen those I've seen those kind of things like on TV and stuff like that. I said, I want that too. I want to be popular. I want to sit at the popular table. And so I found myself on the first day of school sitting at the popular table with my new friends, Cedric and Mike. So at some point during that day, during that week, because everything felt surreal. Everything really felt surreal. I had gone from being invisible to being visible. That's huge for someone that was used to being invisible. That's huge. Maybe for somebody that's not used to being invisible, somebody that's still used to be invisible, maybe this isn't like a huge upgrade. I felt that I was upgraded, like when you get upgraded to first class. I felt upgraded. It felt like an upgraded life, an upgraded high school experience is what it felt like. And so a light bulb went off in my mind. And I said, you know something? No more. No more dumbing down or hiding my light so that dummies can feel better about who they are. I will no longer diminish myself for anyone. This is a 15-year-old that said that. No longer. In Romans 12:2 of the Bible, it reads, "Do not copy the behavior and customs of this world, but let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect." So back to that crazy teenager. A year had gone by, and I was popular. I was known. There was a newfound confidence that I expressed, that I felt. Cedric and Mike were my best friends, but I had other friends. There were actually people who expressed wanting to be me. To me. Huge contrast from a year before, or 2 years before, technically, when I was invisible and hiding and had to manifest illness because I wanted to hide and stay home. I made a decision that I wanted to graduate with my friends. I was entering 11th grade. My best friends were entering their senior year of high school. Remember, I was kept back due to the viral meningitis. But I didn't care about that circumstance. That was just a detail. I wasn't going to worry about that. So I went to my counselor and I told him that I was ready to graduate with my friends. Completing 2 years in one had never been done at that school before. So my counselor was from a experimental or curiosity. My counselor was on board with this. And so we sat down and put together a curriculum as far as what night school would offer. And we knew what I could take in day school, and we created a whole curriculum for me. And so I went to day school, I went to night school, and I went to Saturday school, and I graduated with my friends and walked across that stage. 2 years in one.
But you were popular. Overachiever. Could resist.
In John 10:34, our elder brother and master teacher Jesus says, "Is it not written in Scripture, you are gods?" Master teacher Jesus was referring to Psalms 82:6, which says, "I said ye are gods, and all you sons of the Most High." Metaphysically, all you sons of the Most High means men made in the image and likeness of God are gods because they are potentially all that God is. Potentially. So each and every localized self, you and me, has the potentiality of God within us. We are not limited in any capacity. It is only our oppressive thoughts that has us think so. We are never limited. Nothing can limit you. Only you can limit you. Your thoughts can limit you. But the same you that can limit you is the you that can set you free.
Amen.
So I have a part in Course in Miracles that I want to read really quick as I wrap up. It's a favorite part called Choose Again. And it reads, "Let us be glad that we can walk the world and find so many chances to perceive another situation where God's gift can once again be recognized as ours. And thus will all the vestiges of hell, the secret sins and hidden hates be gone, and all the loveliness which they conceal appear like lawns of heaven to our sight, to lift us high above the thorny roads we traveled on before the Christ appeared. Hear me, my brothers, hear and join with me. God has ordained, I cannot call in vain, and in his certainty I rest content. For you will hear, and you will choose again, and in this choice is everyone made free. So my brothers and sisters, the next time you come upon a situation that frightens you, that tests you, and you feel fear, remember that it may just be an illusion. Remember that there may be a springboard waiting to spring you forward to new realizations, new understandings. And when you see that and remember that, have courage and run towards what frightens you. Run towards where fear abides. Run towards it and see that fear vanish like a puff of smoke, and see what remains. See the love that abides. So my brothers and sisters, go. Be that light that your father and mother meant for you to be. Thank you.